understanding of accounting concepts, on how the financial reports are being prepared, what are the accounting department mostly doing when they prepare these financial statements, how do they start it, how do they come up with the whole reports, and then what are the actual applications of the said concepts. So we will have some samples, some numbers, entries for you to show on how these are being made. And then we will give you a short discussion on the importance of financial accounting reports and how can we use these to make a better decision making, especially in running a business. Because financial reports somehow are like the face, okay, of the business when it comes to the performance. Okay, with these financial reports, you will know whether the business is doing good or doing bad, which part is doing good in a business, which part needs some improvement that you need to focus on. Okay, so this will be the basic principles that we'll be tackling. Okay, so the key topics will be the basic accounting concepts and principles, and then we will introduce the accounting equation. Okay, the rules of debit and credit, and the double entry bookkeeping system. I'm sure most of you must have heard the debit and credit. Ano ba yung ano nito? Paano ba sila ginagamit? Okay, how do these terms impact the recording in the accounting? And then the accounting cycle. Okay, so cycle meaning it's a repetitive process. Okay, every month, every year, we do it this way. Okay, as much as the accounting side is concerned. That's how we do things. And then what are the common types of accounting transactions and their impact on the accounting equation? So we will show you most of the mostly common transactions like sales, purchases. Okay, so how are these recorded in our books? And speaking of books, okay, the books of accounts. So what are the books of accounts required to be maintained by a business? And then the basic financial statements, and then the Q&A. So all the questions that you raised in our chat box will be answered in the Q&A portion. Our workshop, I don't think we can do this on a webinar. So I'll just show you some of the practical samples, okay, and how these are completed, okay. So let's start first with the accounting definition. So what is accounting? So in a very technical term, the system art of recording, classifying, summarizing, analyzing, and reporting in terms of money, the financial transactions of a business to be presented to users of financial information so they can make important decisions. So if you just read it that way, diba, mahirap siyang intindihin. So let's break it down. Okay? Sabi niya, it's the systematic art of recording. So first, in order for us to come up the report, we need to record the transactions. Okay? And accounting starts with every transactions. Either yung may-ari nag-donate ng or nagbigay ng pera sa business to start, or nakabenta ka, or may binili ka. That's the start of accounting. And then the transaction of that will be recorded sa books natin. Okay? And then we need to properly classify. Okay, you cannot just record anything, bunch of things sama-sama. Okay? You need to properly classify ano bang entry dapat ang gawin for this specific type of transaction. And then we have the summarizing. Okay, after we classify, syempre we need to have a report na hindi ganun kahaba. Okay, dapat as much as possible, 1-page, 2-page report. Somehow you can already see, okay, what happened probably in a month, in a quarter, or even in a year. Okay? Kasi other companies, as you may know, sa isang araw, meron silang 1,000 transactions. Okay? So users of the financial reports cannot read on every transaction that came out. Okay, every day 1,000, imagine for a year. Okay, kung gaano karami yun. So you need to summarize all of those. And then analyzing and reporting. So when you already have the report, you need to analyze, okay, on how can this report help you. Okay, and then the next phrase is the in terms of money. Okay, so we need to record things kung saan pwede silang pare-parehas na i-weigh. Okay, and the way to do that is to put them in terms of money, monetize. Somehow virtually certain, okay, most of things can be weighed through money, but not all, of course, we know that. Pero somehow, accounting do its best effort para malagyan ng presyo lahat ng bagay. Okay, pautang man yan, property yan, lupa, machinery, okay, warehouse, building. Kailangan ma-weigh natin siya into an amount of money so that we can compare it, okay, fairly in all other aspects, okay, of a financial term. And then these financial informations, pag meron na tayong summary and reports, these are presented to the readers, which mostly are the probably decision makers, where they can base their decision. So we will discuss later, sino-sino ba sila? Sino ba yung gumagamit ng mga financial ano natin, okay? Mga financial reports. First, the internal users. Okay, so we classify them into two groups. We have the internal and the external users. So first, internal users, we have the owners. Siyempre, owners would like to see whether the business is doing good, right? Kasi hindi ka naman magtatayo ng business, okay, just to let it be on its own. Kahit meron ka pang mga managers or employees na nagpapatakbo niyan. So you need to know whether the business needs some improvement, kailangan ba ng additional capital, or ba kailangan na ba siyang isara. Okay, these are decisions that you need to weigh. Okay, some might be negative, but you need to face this reality, especially during this time of pandemic. We are all hearing, di ba, ang daming businesses na nagsasara. Not just here in the Philippines, even in abroad, and big companies. Okay, some of them are even existing for more than 50 years. But this pandemic really brought these difficulties. And some owners decided to close their businesses. Okay, and then we have the managers. So managers are the employees who are making a day-to-day decision, okay, in running the business. Some owners can be managers, okay, especially for small businesses and even some sole proprietorship wherein the owner is hands-on. Okay. So managers mostly sila yung madalas na gumagamit ng financial reports. And then depende sa kanila how often they want to have the reports. Okay? Some of them monthly, some of them even weekly. Okay, kailangan nilang makita kasi they need to have a quick decision to shift, okay, and adapt on the current situation. Okay, kaya very important sa kanila ang financial accounting information. And then we also have the employees, particularly for job security. Although this one, I don't think this is very popular in the Philippines since hindi ganun ka-transparent, okay, yung mga companies dito sa Philippines. They don't really publish their financial statements or even shown to the employees unless you are a public entity. Okay, you are a listed company, okay, or banks. Banks usually nilalabas nila yung mga reports nila. And minsan makikita mo yan malapit sa pinto ng mga branches. The financial reports, meron sila nakalagay doon. Okay, but mainly, of course, for employees, they want to know if they have still the job security. Okay, yun yung main purpose to in looking the financial reports. And then we have the external users. You can see medyo mas marami sila. The first bullet will be the investors. So ano ba difference ng investor tsaka owner? Well, technically speaking, investor, they also own part of the business of the company. However, they cannot influence the decision making. Okay? Meron lang silang mga maliit na investment. For example, are the listed companies, okay, in the stocks. If you are buying stocks of listed companies like Jollibee, Globe, BDO, PLDT, okay, these are companies listed in the Philippine Stock Exchange. You can buy shares, okay, investor ka, you are a minority owner, but you don't have a say on the decision making. Okay, you cannot just go in the office of the Globe saying, hey, I'm a shareholder, may binili ako, I want to contribute on the decision making. You cannot do that. Okay, but there is an annual stockholders meeting. Okay, if you are an owner of a share and then there's a stockholders meeting and then there's a date for all owners, pwede silang mag-attend. Okay, and if they can voice out actually during that meeting, and then they can even vote for the board of directors. Although it won't have that much effect because obviously probably the majority of the shares belongs to the real owners, okay, of the listed companies. And then we have the lenders or creditors o yung mga nagpapautang sa atin. Okay? Mostly, these are the banks. Okay? Of course, they will be very interested whether the business can pay back the loan, the principal, and the interest. Okay? Siyempre, pag nagpautang ka, hindi naman po pwedeng papabayaan mo na yon. Okay? You cannot just wait. You need to monitor. Especially now, okay, banks will be very interested kung sino yung may mga businesses na okay pa, okay, or they need to check, okay, to see the ability of their customers na makakapagbayad pa yung mga pinautang nila. And some lenders or banks, meron silang nilalagay na mga statute of limits sa contract nila. Let's say, kailangan meron kang makapag-maintain ka ng cash na 500,000, okay? Or else, pag bumabayan sa ganong amount, kailangan mo nang bayaran ng buo yung loan mo. Okay? These are this type of requirements that you can see in the financial statements. Okay? And then we have the suppliers. So these are also type of creditors, although the loan or the debt is coming from trade. Okay? Trade of goods or services. Okay? Mostly, right? Mostly now, yung mga suppliers, they allow some credit terms to their customers. Okay? So ito yung mga suppliers na will be interested to see and check gaano ba kahaba na credit period ang ibibigay nila. Okay? Sa mga possible customer nila. Or kung hindi ganun kaganda yung financial statements nila, probably I should just sell in cash. Okay? So we need to look at this as a supplier. Okay, and you can see this in the financial statements. Kasi hindi naman po pwedeng basta na lang may nang utang sa'yo, sales yan, sabi mo, makakabenta ako, sige, papautangin ko. Pero kung hindi mo naman makukulik yung pinautang mo, well, wala rin kwenta yung sales na nagawa mo and you even lost because you already gave the goods. Okay? Kung hindi sila makakapagbayad. So in order to look at this, you need to assess, okay, this credit worthiness based on the financial statements. And then we have the customers. Okay? Especially if you are only selling to a one customer. Okay? You need to know whether that customer can operate in a foreseeable future. Kasi pag nawala yung customer mo, okay, your lifeblood, which is your cash, coming from the collections on this customer, mawawala rin. Okay? That's why you need to assess whether your customers, okay, can really pay you. And then this second to the last bullet, probably these are the Pero it can be as often as required, okay, particularly yung need ng management. Kasi as we've mentioned, yung management, they are doing or making day-to-day business decisions. Okay? So hindi sila pwede magantay ng isang taon para lang makita yung financial statements ng business. Okay? For them to do decision, they need to see the financial statements. Okay? And it's as often as required by them. And then depending on the decision that they are making. Next is the timeliness and relevance. Timeliness, okay. So let's say you prepare the financial statements from January 1 to December 31, 2019. Importante na matapos mo yon, okay, and mabigay mo yon sa mga decision makers, particularly yung management or even yung mga BIR, may deadline yan. BIR deadline is April 15. Okay? So importante yung timeliness. You cannot wait for a very long period of time just to finish the report. Kailangan yon may timeliness, especially for businesses. Ngayon yung nakikita ko, yung mga businesses, they require monthly reports sa financial statements not more than 10 days after the month. So let's say January, Feb 10, kailangan meron ka ng report. Meron ka ng balance sheet, meron ka ng income statement. Siyempre, for the management to see, okay, and analyze what happened on an every month basis. Kasi they need to do a decision. Kailangan ba nilang i-shift, okay, yung focus nila? They need to do a cost control, cost cutting in a specific item. And in order to do that, kailangan nila yung reports. And these are saying also na sometimes it doesn't have to be perfect yung report. Pwedeng 80% and then may bigay mo siya, okay, timely. Okay? Kasi kung purchased cost. So on October 12, what will be your entry? Okay? Masahin natin ulit ha. Close the deal with the customer who will buy 10,000 worth of t-shirt with 8,000 purchase cost. For this item, you will have no entry. Okay? Bakit no entry? As far as accounting is concerned, wala pang transaction na nangyayari. Okay? Pwedeng yes, nagkapirmahan ng contract, okay, memorandum of agreement, ganito yung gagawin. Pero sa accounting, wala pa nangyayari dito. So wala ka pa dapat i-record. Okay? Kasi hindi ka naman pwedeng mag-record ng sales. Kasi yung mga t-shirt nasa iyo pa, hindi mo pa dineliver. Okay? Sabi natin kanina, 'di ba, yung revenue recognition concept. You will only record it for goods or services pag goods kapag dineliver mo na siya. And then for service naman, kapag ni-render mo na, okay, yung service mismo. That's the only time you will record the revenue. So for this one, for this sample, you don't have a transaction yet. Okay? So next, for the October 14, delivered 5,000 worth of t-shirts and received 3,000 payment. So this time, meron ka ng transaction na kailangang i-record kasi na-deliver mo na yung goods, which are the t-shirts. Okay? So for that 5,000, your entry will be, okay, 3,000 payment. So you have a cash of 3,000. Kasi 3,000 lang yung na-receive mong cash. Okay, that will be a debit of cash, 3,000. And then you have a credit of sales or revenue. Yun yung nasa dulo natin, okay, under equity. So that will be 5,000 pesos. So you have a cash of 3,000 and then you have a sales or revenue of 5,000 pesos. Okay na ba tayo? Siyempre hindi pa. Kasi hindi siya equal. We have 5,000 of sales or revenue and then we only have 3,000 of cash. So the difference will be the receivable. Okay? So, meron tayo ngayon 5,000 sales. Yung sales na yon, hatiin siya sa dalawa. So, 3,000 cash and 2,000 receivables. Okay? So, it will be cash, 2,000, receivable, 3,000. So, the total of 5,000. And then, on the other part of the equation is a revenue of 5,000. So, equal pa rin tayo. Okay? And then for the last item on October 24, paid 10,000 to the supplier of t-shirt. So ito, if you remember, nung October 3, meron tayong utang na 20,000 pesos. Okay? So yung 20,000 pesos na yun, babayaran na natin yung 10,000. So our entry will be debit of liability or payable na 10,000 pesos. So that will be on the right side. Pero bawas siya. Okay? Bawas siya kasi dinedebit natin yung right side. Remember, di ba? Normally, pag yung liability, kapag dinadagdagan yan, credit dapat. Pero since debit ang entry natin, it will be a reduction of 10,000. And then same sa cash, there will be a credit of 10,000. So minus 10,000 din tayo dito sa left side. Okay? Dito sa cash part. So yun yung mga common entry. Pero meron pa tayong mga samples sa mga susunod so that you can familiarize on the type of transactions and how we will record them in our book. Okay. Next is for the accounting cycle. So accounting cycle, okay. So it is a series of steps starting with recording of business transactions and leading up to the preparation of financial statements. Okay? So ito yung mga ginagawa ng mga accountants natin. From the moment na mangyari yung transaction, ire-record nila hanggang makapag-come up na sa financial reports or makapag-come up na ng mga financial statements. Okay? So probably this will be done either on a monthly and on a yearly basis. And paulit-ulit siya. Okay? Kaya siya accounting cycle. So these are some of the items. First, identify the business events. You've seen earlier already kung anong ginawa natin. Yung mga transactions, in-analyze natin. Okay? And then we will record journal entries if applicable. Okay? So you need to analyze yung mga transactions. Hindi lahat ng transactions nire-record. Depende yun kung meron siyang impact sa libro natin. As you've seen earlier, yung kanina na pumirma lang ng kontrata, wala naman transaction yun. Okay? So you need to see what are the transactions that requires recording. And then second is we post journal entries to applicable T accounts or ledger. Kasi on every, in financials, meron tayong tinatawag na mga accounts. We have the cash, we have the receivables, okay? So mamaya i-discuss natin yung mga yan. So we need to properly account pag yung transaction, ano ba yung affected na account? Cash ba yan? Receivable ba yan? Inventory ba yan? Utang ba yan? Liability? Equity ba yan? Okay, affected ba yung account ng may-ari? Okay, sales ba yan? Or revenue? Expenses ba yan? Okay, you need to analyze and know what are the accounts affected. And then you will prepare the unadjusted trial balance. Okay? So yung ending balance ng lahat ng accounts na nabanggit natin, yung cash, receivables, inventories, prepayments, property and equipment, accounts payable, kukunin mo lahat, okay, nung ending balance niyan. Okay, so lahat ng transactions na nangyari. within probably a month or a quarter or a year, depende sa accounting period. Okay? So lahat ng yun pagsasama-samahin mo. And remember, kailangan equal dapat yun. Okay? To respect yung ano natin, equation na asset is equals to liabilities and equity. Kaya kailangan dapat equal siya lagi. And then you will analyze the trial balance and make the necessary adjustments. Yan, I hope you can see my Excel file. So these are also yung mga transactions na nabanggit natin kanina. Okay? Medyo mahirap lang mag-share sa Zoom ng PowerPoint to Excel. So these are also the same samples transactions that we've mentioned. Ayan, yung sa owner contributes 50,000. So this will be the entry. Okay? Yung cash, and then we have the capital. And then we have, when we purchase the inventories, 20,000, napunta siya dito sa inventory, okay, and the payable. Okay? And then we have here no October 12, sabi natin, there is no entry for this one. Kaya naka-blank din yung October 12 natin. Okay? And then we have this 5,000 na delivered, and then this will be the entry. Cash and receivables, 5,000, and then we have the revenue, okay, of 5,000. If you can see, yung ginawa ko dito, yung sa right side, ginawa kong negative. Okay, kapag kine-credit ko sila or dinadagdagan. So that laging naka-maintain na equal pa rin sila if you add them. Okay? And when you prepare the trial balance, it will also be the same thing. Ayan yung trial balance natin sa sample na yon. Okay? Kailangan yung dinebit natin at yung kinredit, it should be equal. Okay? Sige. I'll show you samples more later as we go on with our discussion. Okay, here we close all temporary income statement accounts with the closing entries. So in every period, let's say 1 year, okay, when we say yung mga income statement kasi we call them temporary accounts. Okay? Unlike balance sheet accounts, we call them naman permanent accounts. Kasi yung mga balance sheet, tuloy-tuloy lang yung balances nila. Kahit tumawid ka ng isang taon, next year, i-carry forward mo yan. For example, for cash, at December 31, 2019, meron kang 100,000. Pagdating ng January 1, 2020, 100,000 pa rin yan. Okay? And then as we magkaroon ng transaction, December 31, 2020, meron ka ng 1 million, nadagdagan siya. Okay? Cumulative yung balances ng mga balance sheet. Pero yung income statement, let's say meron kang revenue na 1 million from January 1 to December 31, 2019. Okay? Pagdating ng 2020, January 1, back to zero yan. Okay? We will reset it. Why? Kasi when we do the analysis for income statement, gusto nating malaman yung performance ng business on a particular period. Okay? So if you are doing a yearly basis, so gusto mo lang makita January 1 to December 31, 2019, magkano yung kinita mo. Pagdating ng 2020, January 1 to December 31, 2020, magkano yung kinita mo. Hindi pwedeng ipagsama mo yung 2019 sa 2020. Kasi pag ginawa mo yun, parang 2 years na yung accounting period mo nun. You are already analyzing 2 years. Okay? Pero sabi natin, at most, required lang 1 year. Okay? So, depending on the business, probably, pwede naman mag-extend. Kasi yung accounting period, mostly, ang basis niyan is on how we can convert cash, okay, from the initial purchase of inventory up to the selling of inventory. at a minimum 1,000 pesos. Pero kapag resibo or invoice yung wala sa place of business, mas malaki yung penalty. Okay, it can go as 10,000, 20,000. Kasi ang assumption nila nun, hindi ka nag-i-issue ng resibo kapag nagbebenta ka. Which is a big deal, of course, for the BIR. Well, rightfully so. Diba? Kasi nagpapatakbo ka ng business, may tindahan ka dyan. Tapos wala dyan yung mga resibo mo. Ibig sabihin, pag nagbebenta ka, hindi ka nagbibigay ng resibo. And that's already a proof of non-declaration of sales, which already gives them the right na i-penalize ka. Okay, at malaki. Not issuing OR or invoices is not just an administrative case. It's a criminal case. Ibig sabihin, pwede kang makulong. Okay, unlike other tax, kasi, mostly administrative lang. Magbabayad ka ng penalty, magbabayad ka ng surcharge. Pero for those items, pwede ka makulong. Okay? Although ngayon, medyo nag-subside kasi pandemic, hindi naman nakakapunta yung mga BIR officers to do tax mapping. Pero right now, I think what I'm hearing, and based also from some of my clients, ang daming naglalabas ng letter of authority or LOA. Okay? So LOA, kapag na-issuean ganito, this gives the BIR the right to audit. Okay? It's like just informing you na i-audit ka namin and you need to submit these items on their checklist. Okay? So mag-submit ka ng report, submit mo yung mga tax returns mo, lahat ng mga binayaran mo, all of these items, and then they will do the review. Okay? Even your books of accounts, kailangan naka-ready sila dahil re-reviewin din nila during this audit. Kasi naghahabol ngayon ng BIR. Of course, as you know, syempre, during this pandemic, the funds that are being used by the government mostly coming from the BIR. And if kulang yon, we take loans, which the government already did. One of the big issues right now, di ba? We have like trillions of dollars in debt. Okay? Kasi the collections from taxes are not enough to support the government. And one of the reasons also kung bakit hindi nila masyadong ma-extend yung ECQ or MECQ. Kasi kailangan nila magbigay ng ayuda. Okay, dun sa mga families na affected kapag ganong klaseng quarantine, yung strictest type of quarantine. Kaya gustuin man nila, they moved to a more relaxed type of quarantine na GCQ. Okay? So for the books of accounts, there are generally two classifications. We have the book of original entry and the book of final entry, or the principal book of accounts. So book of original entry, so these are the samples, the bottom bullets. We have the cash receipts journal. So cash receipts journals, and then we have the cash disbursement journal, and then we have the general journal, purchase journal, and sales journal. Tinawag silang book of original entry kasi when a transaction happened, dito mo sila unang i-record. Okay? Depende kung anong klaseng transaction yon. So let's start with cash journal. So cash journal, obviously, by its name, all of the transactions na may kinalaman sa cash or may movement sa cash, dito sila nire-record. Okay? And then most of the time, ito yung laging ginagamit. Especially for small businesses. Kasi most likely mga cash basis yan. Kaya hindi naman sila nagpapautang, okay? Or hindi sila pinapautang. Kaya laging labas-pasok yung pera. Okay? And ito yung mostly voluminous yung transactions. Dito marami tayong nire-record. Okay? So anything that has any movement in cash, dito sila rin na-record sa cash journal. Okay? So this is a typical type of a cash receipts journal on how it will look like. Okay? So hindi ito mandatory requirement na ganito to just give you an idea on how can it look like. Okay? So this is the same sample that we have earlier. Yung nabanggit natin na let's have a sample of how we do the recording. So ganito siya ginagawa. So on October 1, the owner contributes 50,000 on its startup buy and sell t-shirt business. So yung cash receipts journal, meron tayong mga columns. We have the date. Okay? We have the received from, kung kailan, kung kanino nanggagaling yung cash. And then we need to have a brief explanation. Okay? Why? Kasi after few months or few years, pwede mong balikan yung transaction. Okay? And kapag hindi mo sinulat yung nature or pinanggalingan ng transaction, you might forget. Actually, you will forget. Diba? So you need to document to give you an idea kung para saan ba yung transaction na yun. Okay? And then you put here on the fourth column, dito linagay ko is OR number. Okay? It can be probably any type of a document that can be the basis of transaction. But since this is a cash receipts, so laging pasok to ng pera. Okay? So kapag pumapasok ang pera, usually ang ini-issue ng business is OR, right? Official receipts. Or kung you are selling goods, pwede namang cash invoice. Okay? So just to note, take note pala, official receipts are only applicable for service companies. Okay? For businesses that are selling goods, ang meron sila ay invoice. Sales invoice, okay, or cash invoice. Okay? Kasi there have been a lot of confusion here before. Kasi yung iba namimili, pupunta sila, like pupunta sa hardware, tapos binigyan ng invoice nung nagtitinda, nung cashier after na magbayad, sabihin nila, ay hindi, gusto ko OR. Kasi yung naging misconception before, na kapag nagbayad ka, kailangan OR ang i-issue sa'yo. Okay, hindi siya ganon. OR is mostly only for business rendering services. Okay? For goods, it's invoice. Pwedeng cash invoice, also or sales invoice. Or sometimes naman collection receipt. Okay? And then we have here the account number and then the account name. So account number, we put a designated number on each type of accounts para madali yung pagre-reference. Okay? It's not required, it's not mandatory, pero para lang madali when we prepare it, lalo na if we are using Excel. Okay? When we try to summarize, pivot table, mga ganon, yun yung gagawin natin common reference. And then, debit natin, okay, since this is a cash receipts journal, kailangan yung debit laging cash. Okay? It's always cash since it's a cash receipts. Yung credit, yun yung magbabago. Paiba-iba siya. We have a sample here. We have an AR, okay, or the accounts receivable. Pwedeng nakasingil ka sa pautang mo. Okay? The next one is sales. Pwede naman, okay, nagbenta ka on a cash basis. Okay? And then, yung last part, yung tinatawag natin na sundry account. Okay? Kasi hindi naman pwedeng all the time galing sa pautang or galing sa sales yung cash. Like this transaction natin on October 1, it's a contribution from the owner. So sa sundry account, ilalagay natin kung ano bang specific account yung affected. So for this one, it's the equity. Okay? And then the credit amount will be 50,000 pesos. Okay? Kung mapapansin natin dito sa October 1, okay, date, we put October 1, received from proprietor, okay, or the owner. And then we have the explanation to record cash, contribution, okay, of the owner. And then we have the number. Dito yung reference natin, AR stands for acknowledgement receipt. Okay? Kasi yung OR, okay, or sales invoice, ini-issue lang natin yon for our trade transactions. Or kapag nakabenta tayo ng goods or service, kung ano man yung business na pinapatakbo natin. Okay? Huwag kayong magbibigay ng official receipt dahil naka-receive kayo sa may-ari ng pera as a contribution. Lalo na kung vatable kayo, okay, pag in-issue nyo yung OR nyo na may VAT, automatic iba-VAT kayo. Okay? So dito, acknowledgement receipt is enough. Okay? Pero for those types of transactions lang Pero kapag mga transactions na related na sa business, selling of your goods or of your services, kailangan OR na. Okay? Kasi I understand other businesses, kahit na yung normal business na nila na nagbebenta ng goods, ang ini-issue pa rin nila AR or acknowledgement receipt. For one reason, of course, for the tax, para hindi nila i-record and hindi rin sila magbayad ng tax on that transaction. Okay? And then for October 14 transaction, where we delivered 5,000 worth of t-shirts and received 3,000 payment. So again, we have the date, October 14. And then we have the second column of received from, let's say customer 1. Okay, and then a brief explanation to record cash sales of t-shirts. And then there, yung ano natin, document number. So let's say this is the first ever transaction. So we issue the invoice 01. And then account number, again, we have the cash. Okay, 1001, debit cash, 3,000 pesos. Okay, and then that will be a credit to sales na 3,000 pesos. Okay, so that's for the cash receipts journal. So yung cash natin, mind you, hindi naman lahat ng businesses isa lang yung cash account nila. Especially if you have different bank accounts or pwedeng petty cash account. Okay? So for every type of cash account, kailangan iba-iba din yung account number natin to properly designate them. Okay? Kasi at the end of the day, merong mga ginagawang review like yung tinatawag nilang bank reconciliation. Okay? Kasi hindi naman sa lahat ng oras yung passbook natin, okay, or yung statement, bank statement natin, equal dun sa cash movement sa records natin. There will be time that, actually there will be time that na meron talagang difference. So in order to properly perform a bank reconciliation, kailangan ang recording mo, it's on every type of account. Okay, pwedeng savings, current account. Okay, wag mong paghahalo-haluin sa recording or petty cash, ganun. Kailangan specific type of cash yung i-record mo dito sa account number and account name. Okay, so that when you check, halimbawa, sa cash mo na 1001, let's say this is a bank account in BDO. So pag tinignan mo yung records mo dito na sa 1001, cash mo in BDO, and then titignan mo yung bank account mo, specific also on that BDO account, mako-compare mo. Okay? Kasi pag pinaghalo-halo mo yung recording mo na cash in bank, cash in BDO, cash in BPI, pag tinitingnan mo na sa statement of account, malilito ka na. Kasi halo-halo na siya. So kailangan mo siyang apple to apple. So you will record it based on specific type of account, and then you will compare it on the statement of account or passbook, okay, of that specific account also. Okay? So that will be one tip when you record cash. Huwag mong paghahalo-haluin lahat ng cash, type of cash. Okay? You need to segregate it kung meron tayong different types. Even sa petty cash, if there are different holders of your petty cash, kasi pwedeng yung isa hawak ng accounting manager, tapos merong hawak yung cashier, okay, or merong, tapos probably in delivery boy, may hawak rin na petty cash. Okay? So, kailangan yung recording mo, and then, iba-iba din. Gagawan mo rin sila ng sari-sariling account. Okay? Next is for the cash disbursement journal. So, ito naman yung kabaligtaran. So, this is for the cash going out. Okay? So for our example earlier, on the transaction on October 24, so paid 10,000 pesos to the supplier of t-shirt. So this one, again, we have the date, so October 24, and then paid to, let's say, we call that supplier 1. Then we put a brief explanation to record the partial payment of a purchased t-shirt. Then let's say yung ano natin dito is check voucher. Okay? It's up to you kung ano yung gagamitin nating basis. For other businesses kasi ginagamit nila check voucher. So meron tayo dito 01. And then you put again the account number and then the account name. And then And na-record natin yon sa cash disbursement journal. And then we have here the brief explanation, and the amount of payment is 10,000 pesos. So at the end of the month, ang magiging balance na lang ng utang natin is 10,000 pesos. Okay? Yan. So this is just an additional report. Hindi naman siya kasama sa book of accounts, pero it's important, okay, for the users of the financial statements also. So makikita mo dito yung mga outstanding na utang or utang at saka pautang. Okay, yung pautang natin sa customer. And then for payables, yung mga utang natin. So you might not be able to appreciate it kasi tigi-isa lang ang item. Pero imagine mo, what if at the end of the year, meron kang pautang sa 10 customer, let's say 1 million pesos. Okay? In order to analyze it, hindi naman pwedeng titingin ka lang na 1 million as buo. Okay? You need to break it. Sino bang customer yung pinakamaraming utang? Okay? Gaano na ba katagal yung utang nila? Okay? So that you can focus your effort dun sa paniningil, dun sa mga specific customers na yon. Pwede yung may mga maliliit na tigwa 100, 200 lang na utang. Huwag mo munang i-prioritize yan. Prioritize natin yung may mga malalaki. Okay? And then for payable, it's also important to have this type of subsidiary ledger, may breakdown, especially for the timing of payment. Okay? Sino ba dyan yung supplier natin na kailangan ng magbayad? Pwede mong ilagay yon. Sinong supplier dyan yung nag-o-offer ng discount kapag nagbayad ka ng maaga? Okay? So those are also important. So you can see that is already a type, okay, of business decision. Using, okay, the financial information na nagawa natin from the start, no? From the start na nangyaring transaction, na-record natin siya, sinamarize natin, and then we prepare the subsidiary ledger. Okay? So you can already see, kahit papano, meron na tayong decision na ginagawa. Kahit wala pa yung financial statements. Kasi for financial reports naman, there are different type of financial reports. And sometimes, the management has the discretion kung anong klaseng report ang gusto nilang ipagawa. Hindi lang tayo nagre-rely dun sa minimum na balance sheet and income statements. Sometimes yung management, they can be very creative. Okay? Depending on what they need or what's the type of business you are running. Okay? As ang importante dyan, yung mga transactions natin, they are properly recorded. Okay? For the side of accountants. Para ma-produce yung reports na i-require ng management. Kasi kung mali ang recording mo, like yung dito, imbis na ganito, pag may pinagawang report yung management, mali mo siyang nagawa, baka mali yung maging desisyon, okay, ng management or even the other users of the financial statements. So ito lang yung mga pinaka-basic or minimum requirement sa recording natin. Okay? For the reports, there could be a lot of different types of reports depending on the need of the management for their decision making. Okay? They can focus on the AR, they can focus on the payable, they can focus on sales or on expenses. Okay? As long as the records are properly maintained, magagawa yun ng accounting. Okay? Sige. So, any question for this? I think yung sa financial statements natin, we can do that after after lunch para hindi tayo masyadong ma-overflow ng information. Sige, maybe we can tackle some of the questions. I think may mga nag-raise ng questions earlier. Okay, first one, how do you record refund? I heard from someone that goodwill can be recorded. How? Okay, how do you record a refund? If you are the seller, okay, may nag-refund, of course, you need to give back the cash. And then kukunin mo ulit yung inventory. Correct? So for your part, you will check, automatic na record mo na yung cash. So you debit the cash and you debit the sales kasi you need to reverse the sales na ginawa mo since it's a refund. And then you credit cash kasi binalik mo yung pera ng customer. Okay? And then, remember, yung customer, kailangan niyang ibalik yung inventory. Right? So you can record the inventory, okay, debit inventory, and then you credit the cost of sales or yung expense na na-record mo nung binigay mo yung inventory. But you need to check whether that inventory, okay, can still be sold in the future. Kasi kung wala na, you need to write off that inventory already. Kasi you need to check what's the reason kung bakit ba nire-refund. Kasi sometimes probably the good is not it's not functioning. Pwedeng sira siya. So if hindi mo na siya mabebenta, you need to write it off. Or kung if you can still use it, just need some repair, you just retain it as inventory. Okay? I heard from someone that goodwill can be recorded. How? No, absolutely not. Goodwill has nothing to do with the refund. Okay? Actually, goodwill is only recorded in consolidation of financial statements, which is too advanced for you guys. Okay? Walang nagre-record ng goodwill internally. Kasi goodwill is a type of asset, it's a type of intangible asset. Okay? Na nabibili lang yon or nare-record lang yon kapag meron kang ina-acquire na other business. Okay? Let's say, si Jollibee nung binili niya si Mang Inasal. Okay, ganun na lang natin. Si Mang Inasal, meron siyang net asset or equity na let's say 5 million. What we mean by net asset? Total asset minus liabilities, which is the equity. Okay? If you look at it based on balikan natin yung where is our accounting equation? Yan. Yung accounting equation natin. Diba? So pag binawas mo yung liability sa asset, that will be the equity or minsan tinatawag nilang net asset. Let's say merong net asset na 500 million si Mang Inasal during that time. So strictly speaking, after valuing everything, dapat kung bibili ni Jollibee si Mang Inasal, 500 million lang. 'Di ba? Kasi yun lang naman yung net asset niya eh. Pero hindi naman papayag si Mang Inasal na 500 million lang siya bibilin kasi magkaka-sales pa siya in the future, 'di ba? Tsaka yung pangalan niya mismo, yun yung tinatawag na goodwill actually, the name of Mang Inasal. Okay, meron siyang trademark, meron siyang a name that is known. When you say Mang Inasal, alam mo na agad. Okay, and you trust it. So if Jollibee paid let's say 700 million, so yung difference na 200 million, that will be the goodwill. So kumbaga yun yung pangalan ni Mang Inasal na binili ni Jollibee on top of the assets, okay, of Mang Inasal na worth 500 million lang. Okay? So yun yung goodwill. It's a very complex type of transaction actually. And then just to give you an idea. And then we have here from Ms. Karen, are consignment considered accrual? No. Consignment is parang patago lang. Okay? Hindi mo i-record yung inventory because those are not yours. In a consignment agreement, okay, the consignor only asks the consignee to keep the inventories or the items, but the ownership is still retained by the consignor. So ibig sabihin, hindi mo kailangang mag-record ng accrual. Okay? You will only record this kapag nagkaroon ng sales. And then depende sa agreement ninyo. Okay, do you have a you have an on the cost depending on your agreement on the pricing. Okay? Pero as long as na consignment lang, wala mo ng recording ng accrual. And then in our company as an NGO, we receive donations. Some makes pledges, but sometimes hindi natutuloy. So do we still record that? Yes. Actually, this is a type of receivable. Although for NGOs kasi, meron silang sariling accounting concept na ginagamit. Pero same lang siya for receivable. So pledge, ano naman siya, pledges ang tawag sa kanila. So you will record the receivable, okay, and then you'll have a type of donation, okay, pledge. And then kapag hindi siya natuloy, you can reverse that. Okay, as long as you confirm na hindi na nga matutuloy yung donation. Other NGOs are using cash basis. You can also do that. They only record donations kapag na-receive na nila in actual yung property. Pwedeng cash or specific type of property. Pwede rin gamitin yun ng NGO. Kasi non-tax naman yung mga NGOs mostly. As long as you registered it that way to be tax exempted. So wala ka naman magiging problem. You can either use cash basis or the accrual basis. Okay? And then, we have here one. Paano mag-monitor ng sales for small business owners with sales not more than 2,000 a year? Yep. So actually, you can do it that way. Yung ginawa natin kanina sa cash journal. Mostly cash journal lang ang ginagamit kapag maliit na business. You record there yung mga accounting entries natin. Debit, cash, credit, sales. Debit, cash, credit, sales. Laging ganun naman yan. And then you total the sales. Same type pa rin siya ng monitoring. I don't think there will be much of a problem. And it will be easier for small businesses to monitor this. And one more good thing about it, as far as tax is concerned, okay, if sole proprietorship to and you choose the 8% taxation, wala kang tax na babayaran. Okay? Kung less than 250,000 ka in a year. Okay? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Kasi for tax purposes na lang ang magiging concern mo. For NGO, yep. Pwedeng cash basis as I mentioned earlier. No. Sorry Your question is pwede po bang cash basis ang income and then accrual and expense? Sorry, hindi po siya po pwede. As we've mentioned earlier, yung sa foundation natin, dun sa accounting concepts natin, kailangan meron tayong consistency, okay, on using the accountings, okay? Kung cash basis ka sa isang transaction, kailangan cash basis ka sa lahat. Kung accrual ka sa isa, kailangan accrual ka sa lahat. Hindi po pwedeng iba-iba for income and expense. Kasi malilito ka rin actually. Yung accounting mismo malilito siya kapag ginawa niya yon. Okay, and the consistency of the accounting concept will also die down. Okay, so you need to be consistent. Kasi you're looking of, nandun din yung affected din yung matching principle natin. Okay, sabi natin, di ba, for income, kung kailan mo siya na-recognize, ganun din dapat sa expense. So kung magkaiba yung recognition mo ng income sa expense, hindi mo na rin sinusunod yung matching principle. Okay? I think that answers your question. kung nasa cash lang yan. Probably will say kung nasa cash, kung nasa savings yan, kikita siya ng magkano? 0.0125%, 'di ba? So parang virtually, parang wala rin siyang kinikita. Actually, most of the banks just recently updated their interest for a savings account. Bumaba lahat alos. I saw one post, yung isang bangko, 0.0125% na lang per annum yung interest for savings account. So parang actually parang wala ka man nakukuha sa kanila for that interest, right? So I'm not also suggesting na you stock up a lot of cash. Okay, you just have to carefully review your business needs, okay, on how you should manage it. And then you have the inventory. Okay, so if you're selling goods, okay, depending on the type of business that you are trading, this will be the inventories. Okay, there will be no specific type of inventory na sinabi natin kapag ganito yan, inventory na yan. Hindi. So, depende sa business. So, for example, if you're in a t-shirt business, say, buying and selling t-shirt, your inventory will be the t-shirts. Okay? Kung meron kang warehouse, meron kang lot kung saan nandun yung paggawaan mo, that will be properties, not inventories. Okay? So, yung magiging fixed assets mo or property, plant, and equipment. But, let's say, you're a real estate company, like Ayala Land, mga ganon. So, meron kang mga biniling lupa which you intend to sell in the future or you want to develop, okay? And then, you will convert it into village or condominium, and then you will sell it. Pag ganon ang business mo, ang inventory mo is yung lupa na mismo. Okay? Or kung pinagawa nyo ng bahay, balak mong ibenta sa real estate company, yun ang inventory mo, yung bahay at yung lupa. Okay? So inventory, okay, there is no definitive term. It will depend on the business that you are doing. Okay? So most of the time, these are the items that you are selling. Okay? There are also other types of inventories like supplies inventories. Probably hindi mo naman binibenta. You are just using for administrative purposes. Bond paper, ink, right? Those like kung nag-i-stock ka ng marami na you think it will be a material, okay, you can record them as supplies inventory. Pero kung hindi naman material yon na you think you can consume it within like 1 week or 1 month, you can just expense it out or supplies expense kesa sa i-monitor mo pa siya under inventory. Okay? Remember the concept of materiality, yung nabanggit natin kanina. You can check whether is it material to be recorded as inventory for supplies, or can you just expense it out para wala nang monitoring. Okay? So, strictly speaking, for the materiality, the rule of the thumb is to ask whether that amount, okay, kapag nawala yan, will it affect, okay, the decision of decision makers? Parang ganun yan. Halimbawa, nawawalan tayo ng 500,000. Okay? Balak nating ilabas itong financial statement natin, income statement. Shall we continue to do additional investment kung nawawalan tayo ng 500,000? If the answer is yes, that means that amount is material to you. Okay? Pero kung hindi naman, okay, para sa'yo, we will still continue as originally planned kahit may nawawalang ganito. That means that amount is not material. Okay? That's one way to measure materiality. And then, for the right side, okay, because we have asset and then equals liability. So liability, we have here the obligations of the firm that will be settled by using assets. Okay? We set assets kasi hindi naman automatically cash lang ang pwedeng ipambayad. Okay? Other types of assets can be used as payment. Actually, a long time ago, ganun ang gamit. Yun ang tinatawag nating barter. Okay? Instead of paying cash, you pay other items. Actually, that's going back right now. I'm seeing some posts. Okay? Dahil sa hirap ng buhay ngayon, some people cannot convert items to cash. They're willing to trade. Nangyayari yun eh. May mga nakikita akong mga post sa Facebook, yung willing to do a trade barter kung ano yung meron sila. Like if you have fruits, you have vegetables, and then the other one, meron silang mga gamit or other products, and then they do trading. Okay? So they just have to agree, of course, on the amount. Kasi somehow, you still need to make sure na kung ano yung ibibigay mo, eh hindi lalayo sa value ng marireceive mo. Di ba? That's one of the reason na kailangan pa rin as much as possible, you need to measure it on a monetary value. Kasi you need to know how will you know na parehas yung value. Of course, converting it to cash or to peso. You can just estimate. I'm giving you this product. It costs this amount, this much. So you need to give me your product, which cost should also be near, if not exactly the same amount as the item that I'm giving you. Okay? So the first item is the accounts payable. Ito yung mga natin, mga common types of payable arising from the purchase of goods in our trade, which are not yet paid in cash. Okay? So yung sabi natin kanina, if you are on a t-shirt business, pag bumibili ka ng tela, hindi mo pa binayaran kagad yung supplier ng tela, okay, so that will be recorded under accounts payable. Okay, even other types of raw materials, pag may binili ka, yung mga inventory items mo, pag mga binili mo yon or bumili ka ng other assets, properties, equipment, okay, so those are type of accounts payable as long as they are coming from trade transactions of the business. Okay? Kung paano mo pinapatakbo yung business, kung ano yung mga kailangan mong bilhin. Kapag inutang mo sila, sa accounts payable sila mahuhulog. And then we have the trade notes payable. Well, actually, it's somehow the same as the accounts payable. Ngayon lang, kung pag pumirma ka ng promissory note, doon lang siya magiging trade notes payable. Actually, this is not common anymore. I'm not sure if there are still people using notes or IOUs, diba? Nowadays, it's not that common anymore. Okay. And then we have the advances and deposits. So ito, di ba kanina dun sa asset, meron tayong prepayments. Sabi natin, nag-advance tayo kung tayo yung bumibili. So kabila naman nun, nung supplier, under yun sa liabilities nila as advances and deposits. Kasi nag-advance sa kanila yung customer nila. Okay? So may utang yung supplier. Pero hindi niya to babayaran as cash. So remember, if this is an advance from the product that you are selling, that means you will settle this or you will pay this by delivering your product in the future. Okay? So yun yung mga advances and deposits. And then next is the accrued payable. So accrued payable, this is the same as our example earlier, yung sa electricity, di ba? We've mentioned na if your electric bill, the reading period is, let's say, August 1 to August 31, okay? Hindi mo naman agad marireceive yung statement mo, okay? Or yung bill mo. Malamang marireceive mo yan September 15. But in the month of August, you already need to record that expense, the utilities or electricity expense. So you need to accrue. Okay? So yun yung mga accrued payables. So most of the time, the basis of accrued payables are the recent expenses on previous months. So kung expense mo yan ng August 1 to 31 at wala pa yung bill mo, you can look for the July, June, tingnan mo yung mga bill mo doon kasi most likely hindi naman lalayo dyan yung magiging bill mo for August. So that will be the amount you will accrue. Okay? Kasi sabi natin, di ba, paano kung every month nagko-close ng books, kailangan magkaroon na ng FS by September 10. Eh yung bill ng kuryente, September 15 pa darating. Okay? So, you need to accrue that already. sa September 10 pa lang. So ang magiging basis mo ay yung mga billings mo from previous months. Kahit wala pa yung bill mo na actual. Okay? So you can do an estimation. Taxes payable. Okay? So this will be the income tax. Okay? For in the Philippines, we do it quarterly. Okay? Q1, Q2, Q3, and then the annual income tax. Then meron din tayong mga VAT. If you have output VAT that is more than your input VAT and you are VATable, okay? So that will be one of the due for payment under taxes payable. Okay? And then we have the current portion of long-term debt. Okay? So current portion of long-term debt, so imagine kung meron tayong loan sa bangko, okay, and then we are paying it on amortized. Mostly ganun naman ang ginagawa ng banks. Meron ng amortization schedule. And then binabayaran natin to on a fixed amount. Let's say 50,000 every month for 10 years. Diba? So, sa utang na yon, sa binabayaran mo noon na 50,000, a portion of it is a principal and a portion of it is interest. Okay? That is true if you look at your amortization schedule kung meron kayong mga loan. Kahit personal vehicle loan, okay, or house loan, ganon yung lahat so that yung payment is equal, pare-parehas throughout the loan term kung 10 years man siya. So yung payable mo sa loan na principal that will be due within 1 year, yun yung magiging current portion. Okay? So if you are reporting for a December 31, 2019, yung babayaran mong principal from January 1 to December 2020 will be recorded as current portion of long-term debt. Bakit importante na, bakit mo pa kailangang ihiwalay yung current portion dun sa non-current portion? Eh, isang utang lang naman yun. Diba? Isang bangko lang naman ang pagbabayaran. Well, it's very important kasi if you are assessing the liquidity of the company, you need to check alin ba yung mga utang na malapit na mag-due. Okay? Yun yung tinatawag nilang current. Okay? On a financial term. Pag sinabing current, these are amounts or items that are due within 1 year. So whether you can use them within 1 year or you need to pay them within 1 year. Okay? So yung sa payable natin dito, all of the items hanggang sa current portion of long-term debt will be classified as current liabilities. Okay? So all of these will be due and payable within the next year. Okay? Yung bonds payable and the non-current portion of long-term debt will be considered as non-current liabilities. Okay? So bonds payable, ito yung naging sample natin kanina for San Miguel. Sabi natin mag-i-issue ng bonds si San Miguel and then they can sell it to the public. Magkakautang sila sa public. So usually these are divided into certain face amount. Pwedeng 1,000, pwedeng 10,000. Okay? Then ikaw bibili ka naman. Bibilin mo siya based on that face amount portion. Tigwa 1,000 or tigta 10,000. Okay? And then San Miguel needs to pay it on a basis na yung interest, most of the time, these are paid on yung interest binabayaran every 6 months. Okay? And the principal, it is paid lump sum sa dulo. Okay? But still, it will depend on the bonds payable. Kasi meron tinatawag na callable bonds payable. When we say callable, okay, yung nagpautang, yung nangutang, like si San Miguel, pwede niyang at discretion sabihin niya, oy, may pera na ako, gumanda yung kita, bayaran ko na ng buo. Babayaran ko na yung principal na lahat at saka kung ano yung due. Okay? They can do that if it's a callable bonds payable. Okay? So these are the types of liabilities. Balik lang tayo dun sa assets, yung nabanggit natin, for the current and non-current. So for these types of assets, up to the inventory, these are current assets. Okay? Because they will be converted into cash or paid, okay, or used within 1 year. Cash na yan. So no question. Cash equivalent, sabi natin 3 months. Marketable securities, okay, these are traded, so anytime you can sell them. Prepayments, if you are doing prepayments for your for purchase of goods, siguro naman hindi ka naman nag-advance na kukunin mo for the next year, di ba? Kasi if you are using that for trading. Okay, unless may ibang prepayments na long term din. Like yung mga deposits sa rent, okay, and then the agreement says na you will only get this deposit at the end of the term. And yung term ng rent ninyo is 5 years. So kapag gano'n ang usapan, the prepayment will be considered as non-current. Okay? Kasi marirefund mo lang yung deposit mo after 5 years based dun sa usapan ninyo. Okay? So you need to take a look at that. Accounts receivable, also most of the time, or virtually, kailangan current asset to. Because probably you're only be giving a term of 1 month, 2 months at the most. Unless, ulit, sabi natin, probably na very rare circumstance, meron kang customer na binigyan mo ng term na more than 1 year, yun, magiging non-current siya. Okay? So for fixed assets or property, plant, and equipment, so most of the time, this will be non-current. Okay? Kasi this will be used for more than 1 year. Like for vehicles, diba? Like for if you have a warehouse, you have a factory, okay, or you have machineries and equipment, kung gagamitin mo sila for more than 1 year, so these are non-current. Okay? So next item is the additional paid-in capital. So what's additional paid-in capital? So actually, this is related sa capital stock. So sabi natin, capital stock, merong par value 1 peso. Okay, and then meron tayong 100,000 number of shares. What if in the future, kumikita yung business mo, kailangan mo ng additional fund, ayaw mo naman mag-load, pero merong mga investors na willing na magbigay ng pera. Okay? So if you have a 100,000 na capital, syempre kung paano yung hatian nyo dun sa 100,000, yun yung magiging share nyo. Halimbawa, kung 5 kayo, equally, meron kayong tig to 20,000 pesos. Right? Tama, 20,000 pesos on the 100,000. So, if meron dumating na bagong investor, hindi mo naman ibibigay sa kanya at 1 peso per share yung business. Kasi kumita na siya. Meron ng mga nadagdag na fund sa asset ng business. Okay? So probably you would want to sell, bilhin mo yan dapat 2 pesos per share. Kasi ganun yung palagay namin na value ng company ngayon. Dumoble na siya simula nung in-establish namin siya. Okay, so in that case, the 2 pesos, which is in excess of 1 peso from the original par value, will be the additional paid-in capital. So kung may pumasok na bagong investor, sabi niya, bibili ako, sige, 10,000 share para magkaroon ng 10% na share sa business. Hindi naman siya papagbabayarin lang ng 10,000 pesos. Kailangan more than that. So kung 2 pesos per share under 10,000 shares, magbabayad siya ng 20,000 pesos. Okay? Pero 10,000 share lang yun. So under the capital stock, your par value of 1 peso plus yung binili niyang 10,000 share, 10,000 ang papasok sa capital stock. And yung excess na 1 peso from the 2 peso na binili niya times the shares of 10,000, so the 10,000 will go to the additional paid-in capital. Okay? Ang capital stock kasi yung ginagamit na basis on the distribution, okay, on the ownership of the stockholders. So depende kung gaano karami yung hawak mong stocks out of the total stocks. Yun ang percentage ng ownership mo sa kumpanya. Okay? So pag nagde-declare ng dividend, dun siya magbe-base. So kung merong 100,000 na shares yung company and meron kang 20,000 na shares, ibig sabihin 20% yung share mo. So kung nag-declare ng dividend, let's say 10,000 pesos, 2,000 mapupunta sa'yo. No question asked dun. Okay? Kasi you own 20%. Okay? So yun yung importance ng capital stock. And kung bakit kailangan pang ihiwalay yung additional paid-in capital. Okay? And then next, we have the retained earnings. So retained earnings, from the word itself, the earnings, these are the income of the company. So this is where we accumulate lahat ng kinita ng business for the previous periods or the previous years. Okay? So, halimbawa, year 1, kumita ng 10,000 sa business. Year 2, kumita ng 20,000. Year 3, kumita ng 30,000. So, sa retained earnings mo, okay, sa year 4, meron kang 60,000 pesos. Okay? So, dito na pupunta kapag kino-close natin yung mga income statement accounts. If you remember earlier, sabi natin kaninang umaga, yung mga income statement accounts, temporary accounts lang yan. Kino-close natin every end of the year. So that, in the next year, meron kang fresh amount ulit. Okay? You will start with 0. Kasi hindi pwedeng tuloy-tuloy yun. Kasi kung pag pinagpatong-patong mo yan, 10,000 year 1, dinala mo siya sa year 2, dinagdag mo yung 20,000, ang nakalagay mo sa year 2, bali 30,000. Eh, you are only looking at the period of only for year 2. So, dapat 20,000 lang yon. So, para ma-close mo yung 10,000, linalagay yon dito sa retained earnings. Okay? So these are the cumulative earnings of the business since it started. Okay? So all of the income added, and you will also less, of course, the dividends. Okay? Kasi yung mga may-ari, of course, they will expect somehow kung kumikita yung business, meron silang ma-receive na pera pabalik. And those are recorded as dividends. Hindi libre yun, ha? Meron yung bayad, dividends. Kasi other business, especially other corporation, if they are trying to avoid tax, hindi na nila dinideclare as dividend yung mga binabalik na pera sa may-ari. Sometimes they just recorded it as payable. Okay? Receivable. Kunwari, nag-advance yung may-ari. And then, naiiwan na lang dun sa receivable hanggang sa ilang taon nang lilipas. Okay? Although, the ideal or the correct way is you should declare dividend. Okay? Unfortunately, dividend is subject to dividend tax of 10%. Okay? Merong 10% na dividend tax. Yun yung reason kung bakit sometimes ayaw na mag-declare ng dividend ng ibang businesses para hindi mabawasan ng 10% yung babalik sa mga may-ari. But, just to give you a tip, okay, this is not accounting but tax na. Yung retained earnings natin, hindi sila dapat lumampas sa capital stock. Okay? What do we mean? Kailangan yung cumulative na kinikita ng company, hindi dapat lalampas sa initial investment or sa investment ng mga may-ari under sa capital stock as far as BIR is concerned. Why? Because there will be consequence. And that's what we call improperly accumulated earnings tax. Ang rationale ng BIR doon, sa capital stock, ito yung mga kinontribute mo sa business. Okay? Ito yung investment mo. So if si business, kumikita na siya ng marami, okay, more than dun sa contribution ng mga may-ari, kailangan ibalik na niya yon sa mga may-ari. Okay? Kung hindi mo yan binabalik, ang assumption namin, sabi ni BIR, ibig sabihin, tinatago mo lang yan kasi ayaw mong matax. Ayaw mong magbayad ng dividend tax na 10%. At kung ayaw mong gawin yon, si BIR, ang ginawa niya, itatax na namin yon in advance. Okay? Hindi nyo na kailangang i-declare yan as a dividend. Uunahan na namin kayo. Ganon ka-advance mag-isip yung BIR. So kapag lumampas ang retained earnings sa capital stock, any amount in excess of that is multiplied by 10%. That will be the improperly accumulated earnings tax, which is due, okay, to be paid to the BIR. Okay? Hindi ka nga nag-declare ng dividend, ganun pa rin. Nagbayad ka pa rin, which is the same amount also of 10%. Unless, okay, unless you have the right, okay, business plans kung bakit hindi ka nagde-declare ng dividends. Meron namang mga reasons, okay, that are accepted by the BIR. Probably you are planning to do an expansion, okay? Kaya ayaw mo mag-declare ng dividends or magbigay ng cash sa mga may-ari kahit malaki na yung kinita ng business kasi gusto mo mag-expand. Okay, you are doing an expansion, additional branch, or you're buying a property or an equipment, okay, that will make your process more efficient. Yung mga yun, they are acceptable. Okay? You just have to make sure na you document it. Okay? Meron kang board resolution for this types of investment or additional projects kung bakit hindi ka nagde-declare ng dividend. Okay? You just have to make sure na gagawin mo nga sila. Kasi imo-monitor to ng BIR. Hindi pwedeng dahil nag-board resolution ka, dineclare mo siya, and then nag-appropriate ka, okay na. Okay? You need to follow through on that plan. Okay? So that retained earnings, can still be protected at hindi siya matax as improperly accumulated earnings tax. And by the way nga pala, retained earnings, there are two types. There is the appropriated and unappropriated. Yung appropriated, yun yung nabanggit natin kanina na if you declare na part of the retained earnings is gagamitin namin for expansion, gagamitin namin pambili ng property kung bakit hindi kami nagde-declare ng dividend. So you need to classify it, separate it from the retained earnings na unappropriated. So unappropriated retained earnings, sila lang yung masasubject sa improperly accumulated earnings tax kapag nag-compute si BIR. Okay? And then treasury stock. So treasury stocks, these are the shares. Okay? So ang normal natin, yung stockholders, meron silang mga shares sa business. Diba? Kasi merong 100,000 issued shares. Nasa 5 stockholder yan. Okay? Eh yung isang stockholder, sabi niya, gusto ko nang lumabas sa business. Okay, ayoko nang sumali sa inyo. I want to pull out my share. So the business will have an option to buy those shares itself. Okay? Yung business mismo yung bibili, yung corporation. Not the other stockholders. Okay? Yung mismong corporation. So pag binili yan ni corporation, okay, ang magiging entry mo dyan is actually, you will debit the capital stock and you will credit, you will debit the treasury stock and you will credit cash, yung pinambayad mo dun sa original na may-ari. Okay. So treasury stocks, these are capital stock that are bought back by the corporation, okay, or the business. So in terms, kung titingnan nyo, ba't ganun? Yung business mismo, yung corporation, may pag-aari siya sa sarili niya. Ganun nga siya lilitaw. Pero if you will put that on a reporting, yung treasury stock, naka-minus sa total capital stock. Okay? So, ang mangyayari nun, if 100,000 shares, 20,000 binili ng business or ng corporation, 80,000 na lang yung magiging outstanding shares. So, if mag-declare man ng dividend, okay, yung maghahati-hati na lang ng dividend is yung 4 na may-ari. So, 20,000 divided by 80,000 outstanding shares. So, tig to 25% sila dun sa dividend. Okay? Hindi naman pwede mag-receive ng dividend yung corporation mismo. Hindi dahil bumili siya ng sarili niyang stocks. Okay? So, ang nakaka-receive lang ng dividend is yung may-ari mismo, which are the stockholders. And by the way, yung nabanggit natin kanina na dividend tax na 10%, that is only applicable, okay, if the stockholder is an individual. Okay? If the stockholder is another corporation, which can happen, okay, hindi siya subject sa 10% dividend. Okay? Let's have an example. Let's say si Company A. Diba? Nandyan siya. And then si Company A, they decided na magtayo ulit ng bagong business. Tinayo niya si Company B. And then 95% of the ownership ng Company B is Company A. And then yung natitirang 5%, mga individual employees, probably managers ni Company A. That can also happen. So a corporation can also own another corporation. Okay? And if there's a control, most likely if more than 50% yung ownership ni Company A, tinatawag nilang yung parent and subsidiary relationship. Okay? So Company A owns Company B. And then Company A is owned by certain individuals. Ganon ang magiging items nila. Okay? Sige. And then, just to give you an additional tip if you are thinking, ano ba yung magandang itayo? Sole proprietorship ba? Partnership ba? Or corporation ba? Actually, there is no straight answer. Okay? So, you just have to see kung ano ba yung business na tinatayo mo. Okay? Kasi if you are looking on the tax side, mas matipid sa tax yung sole proprietorship. Okay? Kesa sa corporation. By the way, yung partnership, they are also taxed the same way as corporation unless you are a general professional partnership. Okay? Pero if you are only a normal, a common partnership, you are taxed the same way as a common partnership, you are taxed the same way as a corporation. Okay? Kaya magiging comparison na lang natin, sole proprietorship or corporation. Ang sole proprietorship, you are only taxed from 0%, okay, starting 250,000, okay, and above. Doon ka palang matatax na 5% to 35%. And yung 35% na yon, it is only if you are earning a taxable income of 8 million. Okay, that means it's already a very big business to go as high as 35%. Kasi meron namang yung tabular tayo, 'di ba? For proprietorship. Same din yan for employees. Same din yung table na ginagamit nila to tax businesses as sole proprietorship. Okay? So 5, 10, 15 hanggang 35%. Yun na yung tax na babayaran mo. After paying the income tax, the funds of a sole proprietorship is already at the disposal of the owner. Okay? Pwede na silang mag-withdraw anytime. Okay? Remember that, maximum 35%. For a corporation, they have a income tax of 30%. Okay? Baka if you look at it, ba't ganun? Sabi, mas tipid yung sole proprietorship. At 30 lang naman pala for corporation. However, you need to remember the dividend tax, which is 10%. Unlike for a sole proprietorship, na kapag nagbayad ka ng income tax, you can already withdraw the fund anytime. Sa corporation, hindi. Okay? As we discussed earlier, there should be a process and a dividend should be declared for a corporation. And that will be 10%. So 30% plus 10%, 40% na yon for a corporation. Unlike for sole proprietorship, which is only 35% if you are earning on the 8 million above. Okay? So probably if less than, mas maliit pa. Okay? So on the tax side, mas okay si sole proprietorship. Okay? So we have a one check for sole proprietorship. But you also need to see, okay, the possible liability that can occur in the business. And then, of course, the bottom line will be the net income or net loss. And of course, you will be wishing na dapat net income yun as much as possible. Okay? Sige. So it will look like this. Yung ginagamit natin na sample kanina. So this is a simplified statement of income. This is how it will look like. So the top value will be the sales. Okay? So example natin kanina, kumita ng 5,000. And then the cost of sales or yung value ng mga t-shirt na binili mo dun sa supplier, yung nabenta mo, na part of that is 4,000. Then you have a gross margin of 1,000 pesos. Why is it important na bakit meron pang gross margin? Bakit pa kailangang hatiin doon? Bakit hindi na lang sales minus cost of sales minus general and admin? Okay, bakit hindi na lang ganun? Well, for one thing, okay, on this item, yung sales mo and cost of sales, kailangan you should have a gross margin. Doon pa lang. Okay? Hindi pwedeng yung cost of sales mo mas mataas kesa sa sales mo. Okay? Or having a negative gross margin. Kasi kapag ganon, nagsasayang ka lang ng effort. 'Di ba? Kasi doon pa lang sa selling mo doon, negative ka na agad. So you can already assess, okay, on how much you should be adding to the cost or yung markup mo dun sa cost mo in order to realize your sales. Okay? Kasi after the gross margin, you still have some general and administrative expenses, which are mostly fixed expenses na yung mga yan eh. Okay? Unless you have some commission-based na mga sales representative. Pero dun pa lang sa gross margin, you can already assess the profitability of the company. Kasi the cost of sales, that will be variable. What do we mean by variable? That will depend on your sales. Kung lumalaki yung sales mo, lalaki din yung cost of sales mo. Siyempre, di ba? Kung lilit ang sales mo, lilit din ang cost of sales mo. Pero dapat laging mas mababa ang cost of sales. You should not be operating on a gross loss. Okay? So that will not be a good business strategy. So after the general and administrative expenses, dito na yung line ng operating income. Okay? If wala namang non-taxable or non-deductible expenses, straightforward, 30% times 700. Yun yung magiging income tax. If this is a corporation. Okay? 210. Pero that's not always the case. Okay? Merong mga limitations in terms of deductions. Okay? Kaya kung minsan hindi siya straightforward na yung operating income mo, i-multiply mo lang ng 30%. You need to do a separate income tax calculation. And then the bottom part of that will be your net income. Okay? So you can assess on the sales and the net income on how will be the performance of the business. Okay? To give you some tip, okay, yung sales, sabi nila, yung may trabaho niyan, mostly is yung marketing. Kasi sila yung nagda-drive ng sales. Gaano ka-effective yung marketing strategy, okay? Maganda ba, kulang ba yung marketing na ginagawa? Nasa tamang lugar ba tayo ng marketing? Nasa TV ba tayo? Or nasa social media? Okay, how are we doing in terms of sales? Okay? And then yung net income, you always want that, of course, to be higher. Diba? So if the sales is by the marketing and then yung net income gusto mong tumaas, ibig sabihin yung nandito sa gitna, which are the expenses, yan ang trabaho ng management. Okay? That's where the management will operate. Kailangan niyang mapababa yung mga yan. Yung cost of sales will be for the production. Okay? If you are a manufacturing company. So if you are a trading, probably yung merchandiser mo. As much as possible, kung kaya nilang i-lower or find other suppliers to have a lower cost of inventory. And then for the general and admin, you can actually break this down pa. Okay? Although dito kasi sa sample natin, for simplicity, maliit yung amount. Pero sa general and administrative expenses, there are still a lot of type of expense. Commonly, we have the utilities, of course, electric, diba? Light, water, and then kung if meron tayong sa mga payroll, okay, yung sweldo ng mga support offices like the accounting, yung finance, meron tayong marketing, yung sales, security guards, okay? If meron tayong IT, okay, kung meron tayong merchandising. So these are the expenses that we are looking at. Then meron tayong mga delivery costs, mga freight out, okay, mga selling expenses, supplies, and all other type of expenses. You need to properly categorize them para kapag you are trying to see which of these expenses can we lower down in order to have a higher net income. Okay? So we can review them and assess kung saan ka pwedeng mag-focus. Yung income tax, you really have a limited control on that one. Kasi meron lang yung specific computation unless, of course, you will do some manipulation which is not really good. Okay? So we can just really follow and see. We have to live with that, with the income tax. It's part of doing business talaga. Well, unfortunately, in the Philippines, we have one of the highest, if not the highest, income tax here in Asia on even our neighboring countries. 30%. Tayong pinakamataas actually. So if you put up a business, let's say vatable business ka, di ba? So income tax, meron kang 30%. So meron kang VAT, 12%. So 42 na yon. Pag nag-declare ka ng dividend, another 10%. So if you will analyze, actually, kalahati, 52%, more than half, napupunta sa government. In a simple way on how you will analyze it. That's the reality. That's the cost of doing business here in the Philippines. If you're trying to put up one. Yung kalahati mapupunta sa gobyerno. Okay? So, let's just imagine na nababalik yun sa mga tao, okay, for the benefit of the constituents, of the people. Okay? Kasi we really don't have much of a choice on that part. Next item is the statement of cash flows. So we are done with the balance sheet, okay, or the statement of financial position. We are done with the income statement. So we are now in the statement of cash flow. So this describes the cash in and cash out of an organization. Okay? So ganito ka-importante ang cash. Meron siyang sariling statement. Diba? If you look at the other items sa balance sheet, diba, meron tayong cash, meron tayong receivable, prepayments, property and equipment. Yun, wala namang statement yung mga ibang items. Meron lang sila sa notes. Okay? Kasi meron tayong notes to financial statements. Pero yung cash, meron siyang sariling statement and analysis. That's how important cash is in a business. So, statutorily requirement, okay, we divide it into three parts, the movement of cash. We have the cash from operations, investments, and financing. Sige, so let's discuss it in detail. So, operating activities, so this constitutes the revenue generating activities of the business. So anything that has to do on the on the trading of your business, whether you are selling t-shirt, nagbenta ka ng t-shirt, may pumasok na pera, may binili kang t-shirt, may lumabas na pera, bumili kang supplies, may narerentahan kang warehouse, factory, nagbabayad ka doon. So those are cash out and cash in sa operating activities. Okay? So ito yung pinaka-core business mo kung paano pumapasok at lumalabas yung cash. So operating activities will be your core business. Investing activities, so this constitutes the payments made to acquire long-term assets as well as cash received from their sales. So anything that has to do on your non-current asset, investing activities ang tawag dyan. Okay? Bumili ka ng machinery na gagamitin mo. Okay? Matagal mo siyang gagamitin. It's a type of investment. Okay? Bumili ka ng lupa. Okay? Possibly, papatayuan mo siya ng warehouse or ng production facility or ibebenta mo lang siya in the future. It's a long-term asset. So it's a type of investment or investing activities. Okay? So the last part will be the financing activities. So this is where you do the funding. Okay? At pag sinabi nating funding, that will be the right part dun sa equation natin. Kung natatandaan nyo pa, hopefully. So that will be the liabilities and equity. Pero since we are talking about funds, this should be the long-term or the non-current liabilities. Okay? Those type of borrowings. Non-current liabilities and equity. Ganun ang financing. Okay? So ulitin natin. So for operating, these are your core operations. And most likely, yung involved dito is your current assets and current liabilities. Okay? Kasi ito yung mga ginagamit mo for on your day-to-day. Current assets and current liabilities. Investing activities, this involves your non-current assets. Okay? And then for financing activities, this involves your non-current liabilities and your equity. Okay? Kasi by the word itself, financing, these are the source of your funds. Okay? In case, imagine mo magkakaroon ng expansion. Diba? So where will you get the funds? Either sa owner or mangutang ka sa bangko. Okay, for long term. Hindi ka naman siguro papautangin ng mga common supplier mo, di ba? Ng pera pang expansion. Kasi yun yung mga nasa current liabilities. Hindi naman, di ba? So for financing, non-current liabilities ang pagkukunan natin. Okay, sige. I think you can skip that one. So for statement of cash flow, this is how it will look like. Ito yung tinatawag natin na indirect method. So you will start from the operating income, okay, na nanggaling sa income statement. And then you will use the movements, okay, in your balance sheet. So for operating activities, sabi natin, current asset and current liabilities. Kaya makikita natin dito yung movement ng receivables, inventories, at ng payables. Okay, so based on this, you have a net cash outflow of 7,300 on your operating activities. So ano ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin, sa core business natin, naglabas tayo ng pera. Okay, na 7,300. Okay, that's not really particularly a bad thing. Okay, kasi hindi naman porke lumabas yung pera, ano na siya. It just happened na may pautang tayo na 2,000, bumili tayo ng inventaryo, okay, 16,000. And then out of that, may utang tayo na 10,000. So naglabas tayo ng 7,300. Okay? For investing part, that will be the purchase of property and equipment. Okay? That will be 20,000 naman. So naglabas tayo ng 20,000 for investing. Since this is a startup company, nag-uumpisa lang, this is normal. Okay? Actually, this is how it should really look like. For financing activities and the source of funds, dito nanggagaling mostly kasi startup nga tayo. So for the capital contribution, we have the 50,000 pesos. Okay? And then nag-assume tayo ng meron tayong note payable, di ba? Doon sa balance sheet, 30,000 pesos ng utang tayo. So yung pera pala natin, okay, na ginamit natin sa operations na 7,300, yung pinambili natin ng equipment sa investing na 20,000, nanggaling sila sa financing activities na 80,000 pesos. So we have a net increase of cash na 52,700. Since startup to, wala tayong beginning cash, so it will also be our ending, 52,700. Okay? So it's really important to classify them on these types, for operating, investing, and financing. Kasi you need to know where which type of activities where the cash is going in and going out. Okay, so that you can properly analyze. And if this is a startup, you will accept this type of cash flow kasi ganito talaga yung magiging itsura niya. Okay? Pero kapag matagal ka na nag-ooperate, okay, and the business is doing good, especially if that's the items that's being shown sa income statement, we have a net income. So we will be expecting na yung cash natin nanggagaling sa operating activities dapat. Okay? Probably we have some investments on the investing activities or we are paying on that item. Okay? And then for financing activities, we don't want na masyadong maraming dito nanggagaling yung cash. Kasi kaya to financing activities, we need to pay some of this, not just the principal, even yung interest. Okay? Kasi kapag pumasok yung cash galing sa financing activities, merong ka-partner na additional expense yan. Okay? Kapag ang funds nanggaling sa may-ari or sa stockholders, they will be expecting dividends. Okay? And if the cash is coming from banks, from loans, they will be expecting interest. Okay? So hindi rin maganda na porque nakita mo na, uy, ang daming pumasok na cash, it's already a good thing. Kaso nanggaling pala sila sa financing activities. It's also not a good thing. It will be better if manggagaling yung cash mo sa operating activities. Okay? Which is yung first part. Ibig sabihin, the cash is coming from the operations itself, from the core business. You are self-sustaining. Okay? The business is self-sustaining. Kasi if the cash is coming from financing activities, ibig sabihin, hindi siya self-sustainable. Nanggagaling sa outsider yung cash natin. Okay? So yung sa cash naman in investing activities, it will just depend on the strategy and the direction of the company. Kung nasa gitna ka ng mga expansion, so we'll just be expecting na maraming lumalabas na cash dyan and not necessarily a bad thing, di ba? Okay? So you just need to really assess and check on how the cash flows are doing, depending on how the business also is doing. Kung nasa ang phase ka, are you in a startup? Are you in a stable business? Are you on a expansion? Are you in a business na pa-die down? Okay, pabagsak, we have a going concern issue. Okay, so these types, you need to check if you have the to see where we should be generating the cash. Okay? At ang sabi natin, it is better, okay, or it's the best way if cash is coming from the operating activities. Okay? So these are the sample balance sheet analysis. Okay? We have the working capital. This is very simple. So you just deduct your current liabilities from your current asset. Okay? So you can see, kailangan as much as possible, mas malaki yung current asset sa current liability. Second one is we have the current ratio. So ito, same rin siya ng working capital, pero i-divide mo lang to come up in a ratio. Okay? So what you would want here is to have a current ratio of more than 1. Okay? Kasi kung mas mataas yung current asset mo sa current liabilities, more than 1 yung magiging current ratio mo. If it's less than 1, ibig sabihin, mas mababa yung current asset sa current liabilities. And if you want to be more conservative, okay, this is the quick acid test ratio. Okay, this is the last bullet. So dito, hindi lahat ng current assets i-consider mo. You will consider current assets that are easily, okay, and can be converted to cash immediately. So this will be the cash, of course, kasama na yon, and then the receivables and the marketable securities. Okay, so yun lang gagamitin mo and then you divide sa current liabilities. Okay, and hopefully more than 1 din siya. So napansin nyo sa current assets na wala yung prepayments, na wala yung inventories, di ba? Kasi ang ano na to, we want to be conservative. Tinitingnan natin alin ba sa mga current assets yung madaling gawing cash para to make sure na we are really liquid, okay, to pay the current liabilities immediately. Okay, especially kung biglang mag-stop operations yung business. Okay, ito yung mga madali mong ma-convert. Actually, receivables, you might even have. So again, as I've mentioning, so you need to assess the project, okay? Especially when you are getting a long-term loan. You need to make sure na yung kikitain mo sa business is mas malaki kaysa sa babayaran mong interest from the loan that you are getting. Okay, that is the key. Okay? Kasi you don't want na magtrabaho lang para sa bangko. Okay? And then, one more thing for solvency, and this is very timely, is the capacity for adaptation. So the capacity for adaptation is the ability of the business to adjust based on the current situation or the changing situation. Like right now, nabanggit natin kanina, mostly ng mga businesses na hindi maganda yung balance sheet or it's not well-funded, sila yung mga unang bumigay. Okay? Kasi right now, it's really a survival mode for most of the businesses or for all of the businesses. Okay? Sabi nga nila, I think it's Jack Ma who said it. The situation, it's not about earning profit because just surviving is already a profit. Even for business, that is true. Kasi malampasan mo lang to and then until bumalik yung somehow normal, okay, not completely kasi mukhang matagal pa yon. And then you can still go on, okay, if you can cross at least this pandemic bad situation. Okay, so it's a matter of survival. So the companies that are well funded, companies well managed in terms of their financial structure, they were able to adapt. Okay, but not all. Kasi sabi natin, even big companies, they collapse, okay, during this pandemic. And then we also have here the turnover rates, which is the credit sales over average receivables, days collection. Okay, days collection is very important in terms of reviewing on how many days your receivables are being collected, okay, on an average basis. Let's say, nagpapautang ka sa mga customers mo na merong 30-day term. So kailangan na expect mo yung days collection mo is 30 days or around that number or even lower. If your days collection based on your computation is higher, that means your collecting team or your collection department is not doing their job. Okay? Kasi you might be collecting for 40 days, 45 days. So, nagdi-distort, okay, yung strategy mo of having 30 days collection. Okay? So, you need to review that. Pwedeng pukpukin mo yung collection team. You need to do more effort because you're not doing it well. You can weigh it based on this day's collection. So, remember, if you have 30 days collection credit term, your collection days collection should be at most 30 days or lower to be better. And then we have the asset turnover, the revenue over average total assets. This one, it measures on how productive your assets are. So you would want this to be high. Okay? Kasi kung mababa yan, there might be some assets that are idle. Okay? Or that are not generating revenue for you. And you can assess and check ba kailangan nang i-dispose yung mga asset na to if they are not contributing. Okay? Unless you have your specific purpose when you bought some assets like land to just let it appreciate in value and then sell it in the future. Kung yun naman yung intention mo, then that will be okay. Okay? But if you have other assets na idle, you might need to check, okay, and assess if you need to sell those other items that are not revenue generating. And then income statement analysis, this is for the profitability side. Okay, so obviously what you would want here is to have a high return. So for return on investment, maybe this will be the income over the investment or the cost of investment. Ito yung kanina na nababanggit natin sa loan. So kailangan yung return on investment or the ROI is higher than the interest rate of your loan if you are acquiring a loan for a specific investment. Okay? Or a specific project. So you need to do an analysis in advance before ka kumuha ng loan. Okay? Hindi pwede kunin mo yung loan, tsaka mo pagganahin yung investment, tsaka mo tignan kung kikita ba siya or hindi. Okay, hindi na ganon. So for the accountants, they should be able to simulate, okay, the investment, kung magkano ba yung kikitain niya. Okay? Even the time value of money kailangang i-consider. Okay? And then we have the rate of return in owner's equity, which is the net income over equity. And then return on total assets, net income over average total assets. Parang ano rin yan, the same as the asset turnover. Okay, so dito ginamit lang natin yung net income. And then we have the profit margin ratio, which is the net income over revenue. Dito naman, you can see whether you're just doing fine, like 2%, 3% profit margin ratio, or you should be able to have at least 10, 15%. Okay? Kasi kung nasa 2%, 3% ka lang ng profit margin ratio, halos nasa break-even ka lang. So your efforts are not really that fruitful. Okay? Ang taas nga ng revenue mo, pero pagdating sa dulo, yung net income mo, ang baba na lang. Okay? Then you need to reassess and review yung mga costs and expenses. Okay? To generate a higher net income. And then operating margin ratio, we have the operating expenses over the revenues. And then return on sales, it's also the same as the profit margin ratio. Okay.